All right, friends. Well, it's 7:30, so let's get rolling here. Just so everyone is aware, we will be recording this webinar. But let me take this opportunity to say welcome. I am so excited that you're all here. And tonight we're breaking down something that many people experience, but very few people ever have clearly explained to them. And that's how breathing, jaw tension, sleep, and nervous system are connected. So Andrea and I are here to help you understand what your body has been doing and why. And this conversation is a collaboration between three practices that look at health from different but complementary perspectives: breath and function, airway-focused dentistry, and trauma-informed nervous care. So I'm Megan Greco. I'm a myofunctional therapist, founder of the Breathing Room Myofunctional Therapy, a dental hygienist, and the office manager at Wisteria Dental Care. At Wisteria, we like to say we're holistic with a W. We focus on the whole patient and provide functional care for whole body wellness. My work at the Breathing Room focuses on breathing patterns, tongue posture, jaw function, airway health, and how all of that connects to the nervous system. And we also have Andrea, so go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Meg. Hi, I'm Andrea. I am a psychotherapist and the owner and operator of Holistic Andrea Marie, a private practice that focuses on giving or providing psychotherapy from a trauma-informed lens. And I am also a registered yoga teacher and Reiki master. So I identify as what we would call like a psychosocial counselor as well. I hadn't heard that term until recently, but I heard it and I thought, that's me. So
Awesome. Yeah, I've always been so impressed, Andrea, with how you bring in so many different philosophies and integrate everything together to really take great care of your patients.
Likewise.
Yeah, and so I'd love to see, go ahead and type a yes in the chat if you've ever experienced jaw tension, clenching, grinding, even if just occasionally. Just like to get a feel for who's in the room. Shannon says yes. Yeah, same for me, Shannon. Yeah, so I want to start by saying this clearly. You're not broken, right? If you clench, grind, your mouth breathing, or you don't sleep well, you're not alone. And if you're experiencing jaw, neck, shoulder tension, or pain, these are adaptive patterns, and your body is trying to protect you and create stability. And sometimes the most powerful shift isn't adding something new, it's removing the interference. So these are some of the most common patterns we see every day. You know, that jaw tension or clenching, headaches or facial pain, snoring or restless sleep, feeling tired but wired, mouth breathing during the day or night. And any single one of these tells us that your system may be working harder than it needs to. Our nervous system is always asking one simple question: am I safe right now? And one of the fastest ways it gets the answers to that is how you're breathing. So just a quick check-in. Give me a wave, type a yes in the chat if you notice that you're mouth breathing during the day or night. And you can type a no if you're not sure. No, yes, especially this time of year. You're right, Andrea. It's super dry. Everyone gets congested. Yeah, and so the truth is, like, humans are obligate nasal breathers, meaning that nature intended us for us to breathe silently and gently through our nose. When that happens, research shows we increase parasympathetic activity, and that's the part of the nervous system responsible for rest and recovery. Now, mouth breathing, especially when it's habitual, sends a signal of urgency to our nervous system. Many people want to breathe through their nose, but they mouth breathe because of airway restriction, allergies, stress, or learned patterns. And this truly happens as a compensation. It's our body's backup plan to get the oxygen needed to survive when your body is under stress. And when mouth breathing becomes the pattern, the nervous system stays activated. Your muscle tone increases to help stabilize your body. And one of the first places this happens is in the jaw. So if you've been told, like you clench or grind, or you're wearing a night guard, and it's a lot of us, this is a super common theme we see. The jaw is rarely the primary problem. It's really the backup system. Clenching and grinding are signals that your body is under stress. Have you ever felt like it was difficult to take a deep breath, or ever felt short of breath, even when you knew you were getting enough air? I know I have. And whenever I've checked in with myself, it's usually because I've been over breathing. It's because I've been breathing through my mouth, or maybe I'm exercising. But that's because, in addition to increasing muscle tone and recruiting the jaw, our body also experiences changes in the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide when we mouth breathe. We're all aware that breathing, includes breathing in oxygen, and you breathe out CO2. But CO2 is not just a waste gas. It helps to regulate our drive to breathe. When we mouth breathe, we exhale CO2 too quickly, and we begin breathing faster and shallower. And you've probably heard the terms fight or flight, or rest and digest. Both of these states are normal and necessary. The sympathetic nervous system helps us respond, focus, and protect ourselves. The parasympathetic nervous system helps us to recover, digest, heal, and sleep. The issue isn't stress by itself. It's when the system becomes biased towards alertness. And with chronic mouth breathing, poor sleep, or airway stress, the body can spend more time in fight or flight, even when nothing's wrong. And so I often hear my patients say, I feel stressed and anxious all the time. But it's important to remember that it's not a mindset issue, and we can help just by repatterning our breathing. It's physiology, and Andrea will give us a little bit more information on that in a few minutes. Now, muscle tone is one of the ways the nervous system keeps us feeling stable and safe. When the nervous system is calm and regulated, muscles can easily turn on and off. When the nervous system stays alert, your baseline muscle tone increases and muscles stay partially on, even when you're at rest. This will show up as those tight shoulders up next to your ears, that clenched jaw, facial tension, difficulty fully relaxing. And it's important to note this isn't something you consciously choose. It's an automatic protective response. So interestingly, the tongue plays a surprisingly big role in both how you breathe and your nervous system regulation. So at rest, the tongue is ideally fully suctioned against the roof of the mouth, with your lips closed and your teeth slightly apart. And when the tongue rests low or forward, the airway has less structural support. The body may compensate by increasing jaw tension or recruiting other muscles, including in the neck, to keep that airway open. Tongue posture is not about forcing the tongue into place. It's about retraining the pattern so the tongue can rest where it's designed to. Sleep is when we lose conscious control over breathing and posture. If breathing patterns, tongue posture, or airway support aren't ideal during the day, we know the body has to work even harder at night to maintain a patent or open and supported airway. That extra work can show up as snoring, grinding, jaw pain, headaches, waking up to use the bathroom at night, or waking up feeling unrefreshed. You may even notice like consistent dark circles, difficulty maintaining your blood pressure, anxiety, or acid reflux. And in kids, it shows up a little bit differently. We see ADHD, bedwetting, difficulty learning, even crooked and crowded teeth as a result of the poorly positioned tongue. And these are all signals that your body has been compensating while you're sleeping. Mouth breathing also changes the oral environment. Saliva flow decreases, your mouth is drier, and your pH drops and becomes more acidic. It also impedes the production of nitric oxide production, and all of this can increase inflammation and disease risk. So type a yes in the chat if you get frustrated every time you go to the dentist because you have a new problem, or you hate going to the dentist because you know they're going to tell you you're not flossing. That's another thing I hear a lot. Awesome. Right. So you're a pretty boring patient, Wendy. I wish all my patients were boring, to be totally honest. That would mean that we were truly doing our job. I love it. And Andrea says, no more $800 mouth guards. That's right. Yep. Yeah, just working on function, right? We can help to lower our expenses at the dentist. Because if you're somebody who gets cavities no matter what you do, or you have gingivitis or gum disease and are tired of hearing from your dentist and hygienist, just floss more, which, by the way, that's not a real solution. Having your saliva tested is the perfect next step. Oops, sorry, guys, I lost my screen here for a second. There we go. Okay. Now, everyone has both good and bad or pathogenic bacteria in our mouths. It's only when there's more pathogenic bacteria than good that problems start to arise. Saliva testing helps us to catch any imbalance early. It gives us insight into risk before tissue damage occurs, so we can intervene preventively. And if disease is already present, we can customize your care and recommend products specifically targeted to your microbiome to get you back to health. And so if we take a look at this report here, it's pretty comprehensive what we're using at Wisteria Dental Care. We are testing for, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 bacteria, plus an additional bacteria for dental implant health, plus 4 viruses. And so all of these different bacteria and viruses play a role in what is going on in our mouths and your disease level, your risk for oral disease, plus overall health with your heart, brain, risk for cancers, things like that. And so it only makes sense that dental professionals, myofunctional therapists, and mental health providers are working closely together, collaborating on patient health, function, sleep, and childhood growth and development. So I've been working at Wisteria Dental Care for 5 years, but I remember when I first started being so impressed with Dr. Patel's approach to her patients and her commitment to consistently learn all the best approaches to treatment. We've since grown our team and, to include additional dentists and hygienists. Because at Wisteria, dentistry supports all of your systems, and our patients really become our friends. We used airway-focused approaches like sleep appliances for sleep apnea, non-invasive laser therapy for snoring called night laze, and photobiomodulation or light therapy for those tight and painful jaw and neck muscles to support tissue health, reduce inflammation, and improve comfort. We also offer clear aligners to help realign and protect teeth, to provide more tongue space, and to gently open the airway. These tools don't replace nervous system regulation, but they support and get you on the road to healing. Christina, can you go ahead and drop in the chat the booking link for Wisteria in case anybody would like to schedule an appointment, please? A lot of the time, tongue position and breathing patterns and habits are contributing to stress, pain, and disease. This is what we work on at the breathing room. Myofunctional therapy through daily exercises gently retrains breathing and muscle patterns to support your nervous system. For many people, the most helpful first step is choosing something really simple. And that's why I created the Breathing Room Reset, a short 4-week guided course focused on improving nasal breathing, tongue posture, and nervous system friendly practices. In 15 minutes or less a day, I'll provide you with the support you need to get on your way to better habits. I'll share my favorite products to support better breathing, give you exercise tracking sheets, and an option to schedule a one-on-one coaching call with me. If you've been curious about myofunctional therapy or you're wondering whether mouth breathing might be playing a bigger role for you, this is a really approachable way to explore that. The reset is designed to help you experience what changing your breathing patterns feels like before committing to something bigger. Christina, can you please drop the link in the chat for the course as well? If that resonates for you, please feel free to sign up. Right, and now I'm going to toss it over to Andrea so she can get more into the nitty-gritty of trauma and nervous system.
Thanks, Meg. All right, awesome. So I have a question for you, right? And you don't have to share because it's your health information, but if you want to share, you can. Is your system holding trauma? And by holding trauma, that may sound like funny phrasing, right? What do I mean by that? I mean, literally, like your body is holding it inside. So for different people, that can mean different things. It could feel like a heavy backpack. It could feel like a ton of bricks. It can feel like just, exhaustion or something like that. But this holding trauma in the system wears on us over time. And according to research, that means that about 70% of us do have trauma and have experienced trauma. And that's just what we know. That's who reports. That's who knows what trauma is to report it. That includes, any human error, mechanical error, other error in survey data and surveys and data collection and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably more than 70%. And if you are like me and you're from either like the tri-state area or the DMV area, I'm from the tri-state area, 70% maybe meant that you had some explaining to do when you came home, and you said, oh, well, I got a 70, I got a 75, or, and maybe your parents said, well, could you have done a little better, right, in a competitive area. But 70% is actually average. And so that means on average, all of us, 70% of us on average have likely experienced trauma. And so when I say trauma, sometimes people don't know exactly what I mean. So I'm just going to describe, different types of trauma. If this is at all like triggering or stressful, feel free to take a break, take water, get up, walk around. But examples of trauma could be like a severe accident, like a car accident or something like that. It could be childhood abuse. It could be a natural disaster or damage to your home or, an attack or an assault or things like that. But a lot of times people don't think about things like severe accidents or damage to your home or severe weather. And so all of those things could be trauma also. And when we've experienced trauma, it's kind of like, it hits us, right? The incident happens and our senses are taking in the information, right? So we're hearing, we're seeing, we're feeling, and our nervous system is catching it. And before we are born, right, our nervous system develops is one of the first things. And it's really good at sensing information. And so with this energy snapshot, or it becomes an energy snapshot. So our trauma is happening, our body is absorbing it, and we call it like an energy snapshot. And so that is the way that it shows up, almost like a picture frozen in time of the incident. And so in the future, if and when we're triggered, if something reminds us of the incident, colors, sounds, other tones of voice, then that is what is triggered. And we're right back to that energy snapshot of the original incident. And when we are triggered, some of the things that Meg described, the jaw clenching, the tension, the pressure, not breathing properly, can happen and do happen. If we picture that traumatic incident kind of hitting us, literally we are accepting is not the word I want to use. We're taking on that impact, right? And what ends up happening is we end up being in survival mode. So, and if you want to drop in the chat, like, what does survival mode look like to you, right? When I say survival mode, right? We all maybe have our version of that. Some of the things that I'm about to describe, though, are not eating very well, eating a lot, eating a little, not sleeping very well, sleeping a lot, sleeping a little, anywhere in between, literally like running to place, feeling like, you're on the go, you're on the move, can't ever catch up. It could mean, being less available to your friends, to your family, right? It's like, leave me alone. I can't talk now, right? Figure it out. Figure it out on your own, right? So it can mean a lot of different things. So I see, not sleeping well, poor sleep, overeating, monkey brain. Yeah, like the right in the brain, just keep going and going, not feeling like you can just like settle. Yeah. And survival mode, long story short, is bad for us. And it's not good. Being the tight muscles, all the things that Meg was talking about before, the acidic environment, right, in the body, mind and body, all very draining and taxing over time. And before I move over to the next slide, I just want to ask also, are you surprised about the 70%? And maybe why or why not? Anyone surprised, not surprised, sound about right? Think higher. Yeah, me too. And that's a statistic from SAMHSA. SAMHSA being one of the major, organizations that measures this type of mental health stuff. Yeah, I would think higher too. Okay. And so next, we're going to talk about the amygdala alarm clock. So the amygdala is part of our brain that we often call the alarm center, informally. And this part of our brain is the part that lets us know something is not right. Quick story. My husband used to have an alarm clock that was not working very well. It would, I think it was his phone, actually. He would just turn it on, or it would just come on, and it would just, everyone could hear it but him. Like, I'm sure the neighbors could hear it. Okay. Resilience. Okay, great. All right. Well, then, tell us anything else about the resilience that you want us all to know. Peter Levine is a very famous worldwide trauma researcher, in case anyone doesn't know. I took a somatic attachment course, and he was a guest speaker, so it was awesome. So knowledgeable. So anyway, it was his phone, and it would just go rah, 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 rah. He would just never wake up. So I had to intervene, of course. I bought a satisfactory alarm clock. But the amygdala is not like my husband's alarm clock. The amygdala is right on point. It is ready and waiting to let us know if there is a threat for any reason. And it's so good at its job that it often overreacts, right? Because it remembers a past actual threat. And I have perceived threat, right? I chose that word on purpose, and it responds to a current perceived threat. So again, like when we're talking about before about colors or voices or incidents or being in the same place, like the same car, right? Someone has a severe accident. A lot of times they don't want to drive afterwards, or they don't want to drive that car. It's like, not that one, right? And so the mind and body remembers that threat. The amygdala helps memory signal. And here we are in trauma mode, right? And because of that, it gets better and better and better at responding. And so that is not always helpful, right? So the more that the mind and body the more the amygdala sets off this kind of chain of reactivity, the more the mind and body is like, oh, okay, I know what to do next time I see this color, hear this sound, go in this car, I'm going to freak out. Okay, right? Whether that is outwardly or inwardly or in between, or both or all. All right, so I can go to the next slide, please. Yes, so then our system balance is gone. Okay, right. The parasympathetic, like Meg was talking about, that is the rest and digest part of the system. And it kind of forgets that it has a job. Okay. I don't know if anyone been to Hawaii, you can tell us in the chat, but I went to school in Hawaii, and instead of, I don't know if anyone, and if you've ever seen a gone to lunch sign, like really literally like out to lunch, I'm curious about that too. But they don't have out to lunch signs in Hawaii, not usually. They usually say gone surfing, right? Which is, I think, really fun. Whether they're surfing or not, it usually says gone surfing. And that's exactly what happens to the parasympathetic nervous system. It's out to lunch, gone surfing, not there to do its job. And just like Meg was talking about before, the breath changes, the heartbeat changes, the hormones change. We have different responses. We say fight, flight, which you've probably heard of, freeze, submit, or fawn. I like to say submission better, and I can explain that in a minute. And then attach. And so those are some of the lesser known trauma responses, right? Freeze, submit, fawn, and attach are often lesser known. And when that all happens, it's not good. It's not good, right? Just like we were talking about before, the shallow breathing, our heart might race, things like that. A lot of my clients, and this is a general thing, so I can share this with you, they have pretty consistently, and I'm a trauma specialist, things like thyroid issues, things like diabetes, despite body shape or size, things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, other celiac disease, lots of autoimmune conditions, lots of stress made worse conditions across the board. And so that is one of the results, or can be some of the results, of this long-term reactivity in the mind and body when we're constantly being stressed with our trauma responses. And yeah, oh my, yes, fight, flight, feast, submit, attach. Oh my, because it just keeps, the body runs away with it. The mind is just like, and let's see, I wanted to say further and further, and we get further and further from the ideal state, like this state of balance, right? So parasympathetic being the rest and digest part, and the sympathetic being that awake, engaged part. And so this is where we have things like that pop up, like maybe like insomnia, or, not being able to sleep at night or wake during the day, or just kind of either too much of one thing, too little of another thing, backwards all around, right? Parasympathetic forgets it has a job. Yeah. All right. Next slide, please. Oh, next step. Yeah. Yeah. So what we want to do with this trauma and this energy snapshot, we want to file it away into long-term storage, because what ends up happening is we are, I forgot to say something on the last slide. That's okay. I'll say it here. Note to self. So what we want to do is we want to file that trauma away into long-term storage. So one of the things that happens during REM sleep is bilateral stimulation. When our eyes are closed, like the eyes, tend to move back and forth. And with that REM sleep, our memories get filed away. And that's why, we don't have them at our fingertips all the time, right? I don't remember what I had for breakfast last week. I don't remember what my partner said last week at this day, this time, right? I don't remember. If I tried really hard, I might be able to remember, but not necessarily, because those things aren't traumatic. They don't have a strong emotional charge to them. And so what we want to do is we want to kind of disentangle the event from the emotional charge. And when I say emotional charge, that means having a strong emotional reaction, right? And so one of the ways that we can do that is different types of therapy. EMDR therapy is a therapy that I'm trained in specifically, somatic therapy, and that stands for, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And what we want to do is we want to, through processing, and it could be through talking and things like that. There's other methods. There's psychodynamic, there's mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. There's other options other than EMDR. I favor EMDR because it does a lot of different things. Like it addresses cognitions, it addresses thoughts that we have about ourselves, it addresses emotions that we feel because of the trauma or the traumatic incident. It addresses the somatic experience, so like what happens in the body, like tension or tightness or flutters or things like that. So it's a very inclusive therapy, which is part of why I really favor it. And I want to just put my link in the chat. So I'm offering a free consultation for anyone that comes to this webinar. And I had a nifty link to bring you right to it, but it wasn't working. So just email me and just say, I was there. You said I could meet with you for 15 minutes, and I'll say, of course. So that's what we want to do. We want to disentangle that emotional charge, file that trauma away into long-term storage so that the amygdala that we talked about before, that alarm center, is not constantly blaring, that it doesn't feel like a threat, right? All the time. Because when we feel like there's a threat all the time, we're not able to be functional in the way that we want to be functional. And I didn't really explain those states, did I? So the fight, and some of them may be self-explanatory, but the fight is literally like fighting, right? We want to fight. We want to have a reaction, right? We might want to yell. We might want to scream. We might want to literally, our posture might change. We kind of, just like in popular media, right? We have the, those like kind of the big fists, right? Or the big feet, or the anger kind of coming off someone's head, right? Like the smoke coming out of ears, right? That can happen, and that those are representations, right? Like literally our hands aren't growing. And Christina, I don't know if you can go backwards, but if you can go backwards, that would be great, because I forgot to talk about this. Thank you. So the fighting part, right? And a lot of times with the fight part, again, this is perceived threat. So a lot of times other people in the situation might be watching this, and they're going to say to you, or in their own mind, they may not say it directly to you, they're going to think, oh, you didn't really need to react that strongly. Really, that's not what was happening, right? Like you didn't need to yell. You didn't need to get nasty, right? That's not the other person's intent. And that's because they have a totally different view of the situation than you do, right? Or the traumatized person does, the person who's experienced trauma. Traumatized person, I don't like that language, but the person who's experienced trauma, who's prone to fight. And I forgot to ask too, if any of these fight, flight, freeze, submit, fawn, attach are like known or not known. Feel free to drop that in the chat, like which ones that you know well, or which ones maybe you didn't know or didn't hear about. I'm curious to know about that. Flight, also maybe a little bit explanatory or self-explanatory. We want to get out of the situation, right? We want to leave. We want to run away. We want to hang up the phone. We want to, disappear into the woodwork. Okay, right? Or that's freeze. That's more freeze. We want out, right? Whatever that looks like to get us out of the situation. And freezing is, as that sounds too, we can feel immobilized, literally physically. We can kind of blend into the woodwork. That's more of a freeze thing of like, I'm not here, no one's seeing me, right? we literally like don't know what to do. Dissociation, which is a fancy word for not being present, like mind, body present in this space, that can be part of freeze. And yeah, and something that also can, well, I don't know if it's really the freeze. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the possum trick, right? You know, so possums, and if you have, you can let me know in the chat too. Possums literally have a response built into them. They can play dead. And that's really a freeze response in a lot of ways, right? They're not fighting like a predator might with big teeth or big claws or size, right? They're not really fighting because they're not that fast, okay, right? They don't have wings. They don't have, you know, something to get them away very quickly. So they freeze, and they actually, what happens is their heart rate actually slows, their breathing actually slows. They literally appear dead to the predator, right? Because the predator is, you know, very instinctual. They're real smart, you know, they can smell, they have really good senses, right? They're going to know if the possum is just, you know, in drama practice, right? But literally the body goes into a state of almost dead. And so that's a really extreme freeze response. And what's also really interesting, a side note, is that when the predator's gone, they literally kind of shake it off, right? They like literally kind of like pop up and like their legs will move or something like that. And that's intense stress, basically, is what they're shaking off. And side note, we don't have that. We don't have that ability to just like literally shake it off. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if toads do. A lot of animals do. They have that. Either I don't know about the play dead response, but they have the like shake it off response, if that's what you're referring to, Christina. There's actually, side note, there's a video for National Geographic did where they were pursuing a polar bear. The researchers were pursuing the polar bear for this purpose, I believe, which is why I think this is why they were doing it. But anyway, the polar bear's running and the researchers are after him or her. And later on, the video shows that even a large animal, like that's what they're shaking it off. So anyway, it's really obvious in that clip because polar bears are so big. But I digress. So then there's the submit fawn. Fawn has become popularized as a like term. I prefer submit because I think it describes it better. Submission is, you know, kind of like whatever you want, right? You know, whatever you think, you know, go with the flow, right? Oh, you want to have Italian? Sure, Italian's fine, you know, right? And when it's something like where to have dinner, maybe not that big of a deal, right? It's like not that many consequences are going to occur, you know, right? For where you have dinner. But when it comes to big decisions, like life decisions, or, you know, oh, should we spend $10,000 on a European vacation, you know, right? Like, sure, whatever you want, you know, right? Like, should we have another child? Sure, you know, right? Whatever you want, right? Submit can get us into trouble if we're not really aware that it could be a trauma response that we're having, as opposed to just a genuine desire to say yes to something. At work, right? You know, oh yeah, I could do another project, you know, right? It's like our mouth is moving, but our body is saying, no, please no. Yeah. And Shannon says, I wish that humans could shake it off. And that, thanks for pointing that out, right? Because since we can't, that's why we have so many problems, right? That's why these traumatic things are still bothering us, right? Over time, after the threats are long since gone. And then attachment in this context is like becoming so used to the trauma, finding it commonplace, making it something that you are becoming used to, and almost like find it hard to go without. So Stockholm syndrome, for example, is like a very extreme example of attached to your trauma, right? It's like I'm so used to it that I don't see what's wrong in the situation or what's what's wrong is a judgmental word, but what is harmful to me in the situation, right? If I'm attached to my trauma, my abusive partner, or whatever it is, I don't realize the danger. And part of that is because with the system balance not working, right, we're not breathing in an ideal way, right, or hormones are a different way, all this stuff is different. We almost aren't able to tell the difference between what's safe and what isn't, right, because our body is just so used to feeling unsafe anyway. It's just like, whatever, right? Okay. Now next slide, please. Okay. So filing the trauma away in long-term storage, and then tools and strategies, practical things that you can do in the moment to feel better, right? That can be part of therapy. It can also be part of hobbies and stuff like that. But things to settle the nervous system, things like square breathing, helping the breath slow down or regulate. Excuse me, things like the butterfly hug. This is bilateral stimulation, just like this. Our vagus nerve is a large nerve throughout our torso, and right here is part of where it shows up. So this kind of soothing, not only bilateral stimulation, but our vagus nerve is being soothed, and it likes that to help regulate. So those are just examples of tools. Things like meditation, yoga, right? Things where you're being asked to do one thing at once. Meditation, I don't know if anyone here is really good at meditation or really maybe not so good at meditation. Either way, let me know in the chat, right? If you prefer it, don't prefer it, somewhere in between. Originally, I was not very good at meditation, right? So when they would say things like, picture your thought like a leaf floating on a stream, right? That's a common thing. My mind moved so quickly. I was like, put my thought on a leaf on the stream. The tree's already shed all its leaves. The leaves are already down the stream. Not only is, it's not fall anymore, it's winter. Now the ice melted. Now it's spring. All of that would happen really, really quickly for me, right? And I'd be like, I just went through 3 seasons, 5 seasons, 5 years in the time that I was supposed to be putting one thought on a leaf on the stream, right? So it can definitely take practice, and especially for someone's system that has been dysregulated over time, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, right? Their body is really literally like relearning this, like reinventing the wheel. They're like, step 1, right? Be aware of thought, right? So that's really difficult for people who've experienced trauma usually. And then this last little line, reclaim future and thrive instead of just survive. It's in my tagline. There's a typo there. What annoying. Survive, survey. Christina did not make these slides. I made these slides. So, but I say that thrive instead of just survive, because really the goal, right, after therapy or during therapy, right, is to really feel like you're living the life that you want, not just the life that you can have based on limitations that, may be caused by trauma or other things, right? It's like, all right, I want the life I want, not just like, the status quo or, what I'm stuck with. So, all right. I think that's the last one, right? So we want to maybe open it up for questions, Meg. Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick before we open things up for questions, just want to remind everybody that the Breathing Room Reset is available. If you are looking for a gentle place to start, you can use that QR code on the screen, and the link is in the chat. And for those of you who feel they may benefit from airway or dental support, Wisteria is welcoming new patients and offering a complimentary consult and a special offer of $100 off the photobiomodulation light therapy to help with your jaw pain and tension. Again, you can use that QR code or booking link to schedule your consultation. When scheduling, just mention this webinar to access your savings. And we've got you covered, Andrea. There's your QR code. So
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I think you mentioned that you were offering your complimentary consultation. So you can use that QR code in there. or Miss Andrea, if her support feels aligned for you. And Andrea, thank you so much. That was like, I feel like I know a lot about the nervous system, but that was some really, really great information. There were definitely things that I was not aware of. So that was excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. A lot of things that you said I was unaware of.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so let's go ahead and open things up for questions. And, this could be about anything. It could be about your nervous system, trauma, breathing, jaw tension, and how to, decide what kind of support feels right for you. So feel free. I'm open to people coming off mute, or if you want to pop it in the chat.
Or comments or shares too, right? It's like, something that stood out to you.
Yeah,
Even if it's not in a question format.
I have a question. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go right ahead.
Yes. All right, I'm going to take myself off camera. Okay, there we go. It actually wasn't a question. It was more of comments. I'm sorry. I take that back.
Welcome. We welcome that.
It was, I have like a whole thing of notes here. So I remember years ago reading in some article that like dementia patients have a lot of problems with urges and spontaneous crying. And one of the techniques that they had recommended was lightly touching your tongue to the roof of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't understand why or how or why it worked. Like I really didn't, but I remember I've used that technique for people who've had to have like tough meetings in a collaborative divorce session or go to court and they want to cry and they come back and they tell me like, oh, it was really effective. And they're like, well, why did it work? I'm like, I don't know. But now I know.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, just like Andrea was saying, like, the tapping, right? It stimulates the vagus nerve. And same thing, the vagus nerve innervates our mouth, right? It's part of our major trigeminal nerve, which, is the major branches in our face. So when our tongue is tapping or suction to the roof of our mouth, it helps our nervous system to stay regulated because of that activation of the vagus nerve.
Yeah. Well, now I can answer their questions.
Yep. Yeah, it's all connected. It's really cool.
And I remember this was like several years ago. I'm afraid to say decades, but it was. I was in a very, very stressful job. And I remember sitting at my desk and my gums hurt. And they started to bleed, like just when I was brushing them. Never like had any issues with them historically. And I was at the dentist and she asked, are you under stress? I was like, well, yes, I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, it really is interesting what cues and where the cues are showing up and to have something where you're able to meet with somebody who, like you mentioned, for both of you, holistically, what's being communicated here. Just don't say floss more. My gosh, if I had done that, it would have been so painful and miserable.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so much more to the picture, and oftentimes we have to look outside our box, right, to really connect the dots for our patients. It's easy as a dental professional just be like, brush and floss more, maybe try this mouthwash, right? But there's so much more going on for our patients, whether it's stress or overgrowth of some disease-causing bacteria or, some type of autoimmune disorder, right? There's so many things that could be happening for our patients, and I'm sure you all in the mental health space see the same thing. I know one of our other hygienists, Shannon, is on the call too, and we give our nervous Nancy patients to her because, and we joke because, we're kind of mental dental, right? There's so much that our patients share with us, and, we really do get to know them on a personal level because, they are sharing things like they're super stressed at work, and we get to help them work through that as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then also I really appreciated hearing about the submit and the attach response. That really is something that I appreciate having in my toolkit because I was not familiar with those. And I did have another person that I had worked with who was shown the butterfly hug, and she had asked me about it, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that either. So now I know about the butterfly hug. So thank you so much. I just wanted to share that, I appreciate having these tidbits.
Yeah. And I appreciate you letting us know, right? Because I think for me, that's a reminder that the submit and the attach are just, as we know, not as commonly talked about. They're not as commonly talked about. They're not as commonly known. And that's, continuing to, provide that information to people, right? Because if people are submitting or are attaching, it's not always recognized as trauma, right? And it may not always be trauma, maybe some other reason, but chances are, right, there's a good chance that it's trauma that's causing that, right? And so when we encourage people to, from maybe a more cognitive awareness, or we'll trying to make good choices, right? Just choose better, right? Your situation or your job or your relationship, right? And it's like, well, it's not always that simple, right? If there's a lot of mind and body stuff going on, especially trauma, which is such a strong response, right? These, yeah. So why didn't they just leave, right? Well, there's more to that, right? Yeah. And quick testimony on the tongue thing, it definitely worked for me too, right? So definitely, like, I actually have a crack in my jaw from clenching it so hard. You can see it on the scan. And anyway, a physical therapist showed that to me one time, and I was like, this is great. I could feel it, right? And I think that's so much what our people want, right? They want relief, right? And they want to know that something is actually working. And what an awesome tool to be able to give them, like, right away, right? It's like literally, like, try this, sit there for a minute, right? Let me know if your jaw is looser, feels more comfortable, and they'll hopefully say yes, right?
Yeah.
I have a question. What is that strategy?
The tongue on the roof of the mouth, like Meg was talking about before. So I know it's going to look very silly, right? But like, you take your tongue, you put it behind your teeth, all right, and hold it at the top of your roof of your mouth. Did I get that right, Meg?
Close enough. Yeah. So
funny face for effect, right? And if you sit there with it, usually you'll feel your jaw kind of relax, and those facial muscles will relax, right? And isn't that all connected, right? Right? Because when we think about the energy snapshot, when I was talking before about the trauma kind of like hitting us like a ton of bricks, if we want to, again, funny face for effect, like, bracing myself for impact, right? And I'm like, clench, literally you can see veins sticking out and stuff like that, right? Like, you want to be really silly and make a silly face, but that's how it feels, right? Like, that's how it feels in our body. Like, that is exactly what our body is doing and bracing for impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And so having your tongue like in the proper resting position, so like you were showing, Andrea, with your tongue, the tip of your tongue just behind your front teeth, we call that spot. And then ideally, for proper nasal breathing, for proper oral rest posture, and to relieve all tension in your jaw, you really should have your entire tongue suction to the roof of your mouth. So flat like a pancake, instead of just the tip, because oftentimes what I see is patients will say, oh, well, I'm resting with my tongue on the roof of my mouth, but it's really just behind those front teeth. But they're still snoring, they're still, mouth breathing, and experiencing a lot of jaw tension. So once we can work on like strength and coordination through myofunctional therapy, we can actually get the entire tongue up there.
Other questions, comments, shares, things you knew, things you didn't know, things that you wish that we talked about that we didn't.
Megan, just building off of that, is it good to just practice like holding that, like try to put the entire tongue and just like throughout the day, just try to hold that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of the exercises, this is something definitely in the course and something that I work on with my patients all the time, to slowly kind of work that string. We kind of do like suction, push-ups, right? So you start with your tongue just behind your front teeth on spot, and then just kind of lift as much of the tongue up as you can. So start with the front and then the middle. And as you get stronger, you'll be able to lift the entire tongue, including the back, and hold it there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. Well, if there aren't any more questions or comments, here is all of our contact information if anybody would like to get in touch. I'm so appreciative of everybody who joined us tonight, and I'm just thankful that everyone is making your health a priority. So, and thank you, Andrea, for joining me on this, and Wendy, Michael, everybody for joining in on the conversation. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to do it.
Yeah. All right. I hope everybody has a great night. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.